Uzķēršam, preparējam, aizšujam. Tāda ir mēdīju anatomija.
"80 dusmīgi žurnālisti". Tas ir nosaukums topošai dokumentālajai filmai par to, kā Ungārijas valdība pārņēma savā kontrolē valsts lielāko mēdīju indeksu. Filma vēl top, un uz sarunu es, Zane Ozoliņa, aicināju tās autoru Andrašu Foldesu un producentu Loranu Balazu Imre, lai iztaujātu par to, kā žurnālisti strādā autokrātijā tepat Eiropas Savienības iekšienē Ungārijā. Filmas stāsts sākas 2020. gadā, kad Viktora Orbāna valdība pārņēma kontroli pār valsts ietekmīgāko mēdīju un atlaida tā galveno redaktoru. Pieredzējušais kara reportieris Andrašs Foldes tajā brīdī paņēma kameru, jo viņš sajūta, ka darba vieta tagad kļūsi par konflikta zonu. Žurnālisti atteicās samierināties un aizgāja no darba, un kamera fiksējusi to, kā 80 vīlušies žurnālisti vienā dienā pameta savus darba galdus un to, ko viņi darīja pēc tam.
I was working for the biggest and most influential Hungarian media called Index, and I worked there for 20 years. And because it was so influential, we felt that the pressure from our government is increasing. You know, the Hungarian government is trying to control all the media in Hungary in order to let the propaganda flow and try to limit the access of all those medias that are not sharing, you know, the ideas, or they try to work independently. So after 2010, when Fidesz government, or when Orbán Viktor came to power, we started to feel pressure on our media. They tried to buy the media, they tried to limit our perspectives to get advertisements, so we get financial and political pressure, and it was mounting as the time went on. And when COVID arrived, and when you know, all our income were limited, they managed to get into the board of the company. We felt that this was the moment when they started their final push to take over our media index, and we tried to continue our independent work. However, one day they just managed to fire our editor-in-chief, and this was the red line, as the editor-in-chief was responsible only for the staff of the newspaper in order to keep our independence. And this is a story from 2020, so 4 years ago. And at that time, we tried to negotiate with the new leadership of Index to have our previous editor-in-chief reinstated, but it was impossible to reach our goal. And you know, this was a quite usual scenario in Hungary. And we knew that if we try to negotiate, if we try to keep on working, we will be working for another propaganda media, and there is no way to continue our independent journalistic work. And after heated negotiations among the staff of the media, among journalists, we decided, and that was a totally like revolutionary step in Hungary, and I guess in the international media world as well, that we decided to resign collectively. So 80 journalists in one day left the media. So we left like a completely empty company for the government of Hungary. So
editorial room at least.
I'm sorry?
I just said not company, but the editorial room was empty.
Yeah, but all the IT guys had left, all the designers had left, the photographers had left. So basically, a couple of, I don't know, like technical guys remained who didn't interfere previously with the content at all. But everyone who was responsible for the content or the design had left. We just resigned without any perspective to continue our work. But we didn't want to, make compromises. And we said we rather be jobless people, but people who work for the propaganda. So this was the start of our story.
And this was the start of the movie as well, right? Then you decided to pick up the camera?
Yeah, well, I'm a conflict zone reporter, so I always worked in tense situations in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Ukraine. I'm reporting from Ukraine since 2014 about Russian aggression. So I was familiar with tense moments. And when our editor-in-chief was fired from one day to another, I felt, wow, this is my climate, my working environment. So I realized this conflict zone, these tense moments arrived to my own environment. And then I just grabbed my camera and I started to film the whole process, how leaders loyal to the government arrived and tried to convince us to work for them, how we decide among ourselves about our future, how we came to the conclusion that we should resign collectively. So all these moments were recorded on camera. And this is a quite rare thing because, companies taken over by the government of Viktor Orban, this is quite a usual scene in Hungary, but no one have ever filmed how it is felt from inside, how they work in this situation. I mean, pro-government forces, how they work in these situations, how does it seems like from the inside and how people feel, because there was a lot of emotion. And after I watched the footage of those months, I realized that this should be turned into a documentary movie because it's so powerful. So when you see journalists crying, because they lost all those hope and all those possibilities that they worked on for 20 years, and they felt that something very important was ending in their life and was ending in Hungary, they just burst into tears. And you could feel that this is not like a very neutral story about power, that you could feel autocracy affects people's personal lives.
Loránd, can you share your experience? How did you get to know about András filming, and how did you look at this events as a possible movie, a documentary?
Well, first and foremost, I've been following András's work, and I really liked his approach and his mentality in intense situations. There's a moment when András is taken by the Taliban in Afghanistan, and this was not long after that the Heinrich Böll Foundation brought us together, András and me, and they told me that András is working on this film. And of course, I followed the events at Index from Germany, where I'd already been living for years by 2020. And I was also not neutral towards what happened, because Index was the newspaper I was reading. And Index was actually the online newspaper which kind of launched my career as a documentary filmmaker also, because our first documentary was launched on Index, and later I also produced films together with Index. So I was really curious when we were contacted, and András told me that he professionally developed this film with a Hungarian-based producer who, when receiving legal threats from Index, kind of left the project. And I felt like, okay, maybe this is a big piece for me, but until you don't have anyone else, I will try to do the things that I could do. And if I can get money for this film, I will be the producer. And András was trustful towards me, and we could get some money.
Let me clarify. During the producing process, there was a producer who was threatened so badly that she or he quit.
Yes, this is a challenging project from a legal perspective also. Because of course Index wants it's not in the interest of Index to publish what really happened with Index and the staff in 2020.
We had a very well-known producer company that was developing our story, and it was basically the best producer company in Hungary, with a lot of internationally awarded films in Berlinale, for example, in Karlovy Vary, and producing very successful films in Hungary. And they got threatened by Index, but they knew that the legal case was supported by the government as well. So they decided to leave the project. They were very positive with us. So they said, okay, you can do whatever you want. You can continue your film, but we are quitting with you guys. And this was not a surprise, because you have to know, in Hungary nowadays, only films that are supporting the narrative of the government get financial support from the government, from Hungary, from National Film Institute. And those films that are not supporting the propaganda, those films that are independent or
Critical.
I'm sorry?
Critical, I just
Or
said.
critical to the government, are actively chased out of Hungary. So there's a series of films that had to leave Hungary and produced by neighboring countries, Croatia, Slovakia, for example, I could name, because the Hungarian government is really tough on not only on media, but also on films as well. So that's why I decided to move the whole production out of Hungary to Germany. And that's why it was really great that Loránd is not only a good producer, good filmmaker, and someone who understands the story, but that was an advantage that he lives in Germany. He has a German citizenship, so he cannot be attacked by the Hungarian government. And you should know, since then, there's a new law in Hungary called agent law. And this is the same that was implemented in Russia a couple of years ago. So it's like a copy paste of the Russian law, that if you are independent and get any support from foreign funds, then you
even
can
if it's
be named
inside the European Union, right? Even,
exactly.
Yeah.
You can be named as a foreign agent, and then you are named, and you have disadvantages in Hungary. And now this is also, a topic with the European Union, but our government is not really willing to align with the European Union standards, with the standards of the European Union. And this is an additional danger for us, since we are developing.
Could you tell more about the journalists who still have to live and work in Hungary, these 80 angry journalists who left Index? What happened afterwards?
Yeah, well, this is one way a success story. So when I started to film these events, I thought it was gonna be a depressing, sad story about journalists who kept their integrity but lost their job. But after a while, and that's a very, very crucial thing in this story, that we were not only journalists. This was a huge friend group. This was a huge community of 80 people who believed the same, who was thinking the same way about the world. So we didn't like run away in different directions. We stick together. We went out to pubs together, and we kept connection. We kept talking to each other, and we started to think about starting something new. What about if we could collect donations so the readers can finance this publication directly, so we are not in danger of political pressure or economical pressure as well. And then it was like a very organic way of starting a new media. And we did it secretly because we knew if the government would know about our plans, they try to stop us. They would attack us in different ways. There are so many ways the government can attack a development business, not only like political ways, but the tax authority would come and attack those people. So Hungarian government is very innovative to limit the possibilities to spread any news but the narrative. So we did it in secretly, and after a couple of months of work, we launched a new site called Telex, and all these 80 journalists started to work for the new site, and it was like an instant success. It's on camera. We put away our phones so we cannot be tapped while we are talking about our plans. We did everything in secret locations. So it is like Russia 5 years ago. We did it like if we were in Russia 5 years ago. And then we launched a new site, and we could see like money donation from everyday people is just like flowing into our company. And it was like a joyful moment. And I realized while I was filming this, that this would not be a depressing and sad story, but it could be like a happy end and a real joyful film with a happy ending. It went on for 2 years, and then some cracks appeared in this media, and this makes our story like real or human like story, because our film, we saw it on the way of filming. It's about a community and how a community can survive amongst the circumstances of an autocracy, of the pressure of an autocratic power. We stick together, but during the fight, we had some kind of PTSD as well, and that led to some cracks in this process, and many of the founders had left Telex scenes. So it's a bittersweet story.
You said Index is still on. What about the Hungarian readers, Hungarian audience? How do they accept these changes?
Of course, it is to be added that Index is still working today, it's still operating today, and it's still the most influential medium because of the legacy of the work of András and his colleagues. And although Telex is sometimes reaching the numbers that Index has, Index is still leading, and it seems like they follow a strategy that because there are so many mediums in Hungary that are just senseless propaganda, like really have nothing to do with what's happening in the country. And Index is sort of like in between, because the government has influence on Index. So if they don't want something, but it can also be critical of the government sometimes, but not really. So it's in between. It's the government can also is obstructing media freedom by, for example, not giving interviews to telex colleagues and branding it, I don't know, a liberal, left-wing,
Russian-style rhetorics, right?
Exactly. It's the same rhetorics. The audience is limited in terms of, you know, getting to know the truth, as you know, most government sources are not giving interviews or information to telex and free independent media.
We could feel in the fate of Index, the original media, how the government is dealing with the free press. So when those times when Index was an independent media, we didn't get any interviews or comments from the government, from Viktor Orbán, because Index was like far more the biggest media. So it was not like a little blog that was asking for interview. This was the biggest media in Hungary, and we were declined. And Viktor Orbán told, and that quote is in our film, that I don't talk to fake news media, which is exactly how Donald Trump was dealing with the media. So he just like stole this sentence from him. And after we left Index, and Index was filled up with pro-government journalists, he is like giving interviews, and all the government officials appear in Index, and they are very positive to give interviews and have connection with this media. So the fate of Index demonstrates how Hungarian government is thinking about the role of media. So media, in the eyes of the government, is not a mean to inform people, but only a mean to spread pro-government narrative, which is now a pro-Russian narrative as well. So that's why, for example, you know, my publication from Ukraine that shows how Ukraine is fighting for independence was a red flag in the eyes of the Hungarian government.
Dzirdējāt sarunu ar žurnālistu Andrašu Foldesu un producentu Loranu Balazu Imre par žurnālistu ikdienu Viktora Orbāna pārvaldītajā Ungārijā. Abu veidotās filmas 80 dusmīgi žurnālisti nonākšana uz ekrāniem iecerēta šī gada nogalē. Mediju anatomiju veidoja Zane Ozoliņa un Reinis Budze.
Uzķēršam, preparējam, aizšujam. Tāda ir mēdiju anatomija.